You are having a totally normal conversation when a coworker casually boasts about a project or a friend asks for a small favor. Suddenly, your chest tightens. You are hit with a visceral, disproportionate rush of irritation, anger, or disgust. We usually try to handle this by rationalizing it. We tell ourselves we are just stressed. We bite our tongues to suppress the emotion, or we blame the other person for being out of line. The intensity of that reaction is a sign that the person you are judging is holding up a mirror. You are reacting to a trait you have disowned so thoroughly that you can only recognize it when it is externalized onto someone else, a process known as shadow projection. That hidden reservoir is the shadow. It is the unconscious storage space for every desire, emotion, and behavior you are conditioned to suppress or hide during your development. Because these traits are locked out of your conscious awareness, they operate entirely behind the scenes. Keeping them repressed drains massive amounts of your daily psychological energy, and they silently sabotage your relationships by making you highly reactive. Managing these intense triggers requires treating them as an internal psychological crisis. Standard logical analysis completely fails to fix them because the problem lies entirely outside of your conscious reasoning. Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung understood that analyzing the shadow with logic was a dead end. He realized that because the shadow operates outside of conscious thought, you cannot reason with it. To actually heal, you have to interact with the shadow directly, treating it as an autonomous, independent entity living inside your mind. To do this, Jung developed a practice called active imagination. Instead of passively thinking about your feelings, you mentally pull up a chair and consciously open a direct, waking conversation with these suppressed parts. This method takes the shadow out of the realm of abstract theory. It turns psychological healing into a highly practical, conversational exercise where you actively negotiate with the hidden parts of your own psyche. This clinical research links dysregulated emotions directly to physical responses. Your shadow lives in your nervous system. It is a physical tension as much as it is a mental one. That is why the integration protocol does not begin with thinking. It begins with somatic grounding, anchoring your awareness entirely in your physical body. When you feel a trigger spike, you actively scan your body to locate the physical tension. You pinpoint exactly where it lives, maybe a knot in your stomach or a tightness in your throat, and you define its exact texture, shape, and temperature. Doing this forces your brain out of the looping, analytical thoughts about the person who annoyed you. It pulls your awareness down into the raw physical data of the sensation happening in the present moment. By focusing on the physical sensation rather than the emotional story, you keep your brain's survival centers from reaching a state of total overwhelm. This creates the stability needed to observe the trigger without being swept away by it. Once you are physically grounded, you move to personification. Drawing on therapeutic techniques like the empty chair method, you consciously separate your observing self from the triggered part. You give that physical sensation a mental form. It might look like an animal, your younger self, or just a dark shape. Then you make a critical mental shift. Address it directly as a you rather than an it. Begin the active imagination dialogue by asking direct questions. Why are you here? What are you trying to protect? And what do you need? The cardinal rule is your conscious mind must listen. You cannot censor, judge, or argue with whatever the shadow part communicates. When you truly listen, you usually discover that these shadow figures are not inner demons. They are exhausted, outdated childhood survival mechanisms, like a fierce inner protector or a chronic people pleaser, that have been working overtime to keep you safe. Approaching these parts with curiosity rather than judgment changes the internal dynamic. It transforms a frightening, unconscious impulse into a part of the self you can finally understand and work with. This practice is frequently misunderstood as a dark dive into our worst, most destructive impulses. But there is a twist, known as the golden shadow. Up to 80% of the material we repress actually consists of our absolute best, most vibrant qualities. Traits like intense creativity, bold confidence, and unapologetic assertiveness are frequently swept into the shadow. We disowned them simply because they were criticized, mocked, or deemed socially unacceptable during our upbringing. Active imagination functions as a vital rescue mission. It allows you to venture into the unconscious and recover your highest human potential. To bring this potential back into your daily life, you have to apply the rule of containment. Giving a shadow part a voice in your mind does not mean giving it the steering wheel to control your real-world actions. If your dialogue uncovers repressed anger, the mature real-world action is setting a firm boundary. If the shadow holds deep neediness, the corresponding action is practicing healthy, direct vulnerability with someone you trust. The goal here is never to purge the shadow entirely. You will always have a shadow, because hiding parts of ourselves to fit in is an inescapable part of being human. But by maintaining an open dialogue with these parts, you recover the massive amounts of energy you used to spend repressing them. Your self-sabotaging patterns lose their grip, and the static clears from your relationships. Consistent practice doesn't eliminate the shadow, but it does change your relationship to it. You stop reacting to the world out of habit and start choosing how to engage with every part of who you are.